Hello. We're here.
We're here.
We're here. We're not going to get kicked off of Facebook for Mitch's rendition of Angel, I don't think.
Yeah, we're never getting kicked off again because we're just doing covers.
Covers forever.
Covers of songs that we either would have or did or like should have cut ourselves to when we were younger.
Yes, that's our theme.
That could get us kicked off of something probably. So, whoops.
Yeah, out of our jobs probably.
Yeah, maybe. Probably not that. But, so welcome to Suicide and Stuff. I am Jess Stohlmann-Rainey, and I am in so-called Denver, Colorado, which is Arapaho, Sioux, Ute, and Cheyenne land that was stolen and is still settled today. And I work at Rocky Mountain Crisis Partners, which is the crisis line for the state of Colorado. We also have a peer support line for the state, and mostly do work on sort of intersectional justice-based support for people who are experiencing mental health concerns or suicide-related thoughts, whatever. That's kind of my general interest area. Des, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
I guess I could do that. I'm Des. I run Live Through This, which is a series of portraits and true stories of suicide attempt survivors. Also, I do some other things. I started a listserv last week called Suicide Chat, and it made a lot of white men angry. That's my big deal for today. And
I hate it. We'll talk about it in Beef Corner, I imagine.
Yes, we will. And Melody, this is Melody. She's amazing. Tell us about you.
Hi, I'm Melody Moisey. I am an Iranian-American Muslim author, attorney, activist, professor of creative writing in North Carolina at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. And I was one of the Live Through This portraits, one of the earliest ones. So that's the most important part of my bio.
I am also, we're all connected to Live Through This, eh?
Melody, you were the first or second person to tell me you would do it.
Oh, that's crazy.
Cool. That's very cool.
It
is crazy in retrospect. I was like, I don't know what she's doing.
Well, I was so excited just to have that opportunity, to not just have the opportunity, just to know that someone was doing this and that you were collecting. You were like, I'm collecting. You didn't show off that you were like, I don't have a lot of people. I had the sense that there were a lot of people willing to do this.
Really?
I had the sense that people besides me. And I was I'm so happy with what you've done, and I'm so grateful. And God knows how many lives you've saved with that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that with me.
I get emotional when I talk about Live Through This, and Tess doesn't like it when I do it when she's doing something live, so I won't talk about it right now.
Feelings.
We should do our rating before we start diving into stuff.
Yes, our rating. Okay, Melody, this is what I was telling you about.
Yeah. So we are rated R for language, terror, and some disturbing images. So make sure if you're under 17 that you ask your parent or guardian to watch with you, I guess, or something.
Mostly or something.
Yeah. But yeah, there will be cussing, basically, is the point of that. And I don't think we have any disturbing images necessarily planned, but Beef Corner could potentially contain a few disturbing images when we get there. So, Melody, can you tell us about why you're interested in suicide prevention, mental health, like that whole space?
So I am a suicide attempt survivor. So that is my interest began along those lines. And as someone who has dealt with and continues to deal with suicidal ideation, it's important to me to talk about that stuff because to talk about it in a way that isn't just about the people who died, right? And the whole notion of suicide contagion, and people are so concerned about about that, like and I've written a memoir about having bipolar disorder and written about my suicide attempt in it. And plenty of people have, and I guess I'm saying stuff that is meant for the beef corner. So I'll push that over.
No, we will have beefs the whole time. Beef corner is
Yeah,
just
I mean,
have beefs about anything.
Yeah, so I have much beef with the way that we are told to speak about suicide, and that only apparently doctors are allowed to talk about it. And if we just talk about our lived experiences, that could be dangerous for other people. And to me, it's so the opposite. If I had known, like, had I gone to live through this before my attempt, if anything, it would have slowed me down or stopped me. It wouldn't have encouraged me to do it. But there is this mentality among a lot of folks that I ran into that I found really strange, which you'll run into the second you start writing about this stuff. You'll run into a million people telling you you're doing it wrong. Which, I'm sure in some ways I've done it wrong in the past, but I think it's better to do it in the first place than to not do it at all, right? We're all going to make mistakes, but I would rather that we talk about it than not talk about it. And that, for some reason, is a controversial opinion.
Yes, very controversial. I tend to use like really inflammatory language when I talk about that. And I think the idea of safe messaging is just gaslighting. So people don't love to hear from me about that always in the field, but it's this idea that like our experiences, that our like real lives are dangerous to other people is like just as a concept is really fucked up. Like,
I've heard people talk about themselves as suicide survivors, meaning like they've lost a family member to suicide. And that is something that I have a great deal of empathy for, but it's different. And the victim of actually doing it and attempting it, there is like, our stories matter too. Like I don't see why it's okay for the families to talk about it, but for those of us who've survived attempts, we can't talk about it in a way. In the way that we think would have been most helpful for us, because I think that's what we're all doing. What we're doing is talking about it in a way that, had we been in that moment, I mean, I would have loved this background. Like, I would have loved to be able to see people talking about it in a way that made me realize, like, there's a way out of this. So I'm just so grateful for what y'all are doing, and so honored to be a part of it.
I'm just gonna be over here like
Des is just over there making hearts, being happy.
I mean, for 2 seconds, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
No returning my rage.
So I'm interested in just how thinking about sort of politics, not politics like Republicans and Democrats, but politics in more of the activist sense, sort of like shape your perspective about suicide and mental health and how those things interact in the world.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big one. Sorry.
Yeah. So the reason when I introduced myself as an Iranian American Muslim, all of those living with bipolar disorder, crap, I didn't even say that, right? There's a lot of modifiers that I use when I identify myself. And the reason is because all of those, one, are related to who I am and how I take in the world and how the world treats me. And it also has to do with why I write, why I do pretty much everything that I do, why I teach, why I became a lawyer. Like, all that is related for me to making it easier to live inside bodies that are not part of like Audre Lorde's mythical norm, right? Like that whole idea of the white, straight, cisgender, able-bodied, neurotypical.
Yeah.
That dude.
Yeah. that dude. And especially since so few people are that dude. I mean, they're there, but like, it's so few people, but still dominates so much of how we like operate and make our way around the world.
Absolutely.
What do you think are your most sort of like interesting or controversial takes on suicide? Let's start with some hot takes.
So I think most interesting and controversial. I have to be very careful about how I approach this.
Do you?
Honestly, the thing is that I'm allowed to talk about it. I honestly like, and that it should. I'm a professor at a university where, you know, university campuses, second leading cause of death. I think it's criminal to bring in students and not talk to them about this. I talk to all of my students about it. I ask them to create, and I teach creative writing. So part of my classes is a creative action plan, which is very much based on a self-care plan / crisis plan for my student. This is not like part of the creative writing curriculum. They are not getting it anywhere else. And it's consistently happened to me that, I mean, with COVID, with living in coastal North Carolina, we had Dorian and Florence, like all of our years have been cut because of evacuations or now this. And our students are like going through a lot and they have no say in it. At least like I got to choose to teach my classes online. That was up to me, which PS, it never should have been. It should have been a decision made by leadership. And this is just one example. If you don't have strong leadership on a national level, then everyone else gets away with it. And I teach at a public university. So there's people in charge who are just like, okay, we'll let the faculty decide. And I mean, I happen to have a master's in public health, but I am not like, that's a coincidence, but I'm not saying, I mean, I am saying, I feel like you should have a master's in public health to make that kind of decision. You should be educated in that stuff. And those are the people who should be making the decisions, epidemiologists, not me. Mm-hmm. And also the students should get a say in it. And I don't think they do. So I'm really passionate about that from a student perspective, because I see how much not just at my public university, but at a lot of universities and a lot of, high schools and elementary school, middle school, it's all an issue that we need to talk about and we're not talking about it. And my only way to fill that gap is to, in my creative writing classes, bring it up and hope that it helps. And I've had students come up to me and write me and talk to me about how it has helped them. And I've been able to, I've been able to help students in that situation, entirely because they know I have bipolar disorder. It's not something I can hide when that's part of my qualification for being there in the first place, is I wrote a memoir about having bipolar disorder. So they know all that. And them knowing that makes them more comfortable talking to me. And that makes me more comfortable talking to them. So it's actually, I think I would say part of it would be an asset for somebody working in a field like this, and pretty much any field where you're dealing with humans, because this is a real human issue that extends far beyond profession or race or gender or anything else.
Mm-hmm. I think some of my first forays into suicide prevention were always through a college campus. I feel like I'm getting an
echo right now.
Echo. Yeah.
Oh, I don't hear it. Is it me? Is it my fault?
No, I don't hear it. What happened?
We all have an echo.
I don't hear it. You hear it, but I don't.
Oh, interesting.
I don't hear it.
Melody, will you try muting yourself for a second while I talk and see if that helps?
How do I, let's see.
There should be a little mute. Okay. I think that got rid of
on the top right.
Okay, so we must be getting feedback on that end.
Weird. Yeah, that did.
Yeah. Haha. All right. That'll do it. Let's see. What was I talking about? Oh, universities. We'll get back to that once she gets plugged in.
Do we need more Angel?
Probably not.
No? Cannot believe.
No, I mean, we can.
All right. Is that better?
I think, yes, it is better. We got the angle back.
I'm not doing that. Wow, that's you know what that sounded like to me? Immediately, that sounded like a call to prayer initially. That's the first thing I thought.
This is not the right context. What's happening?
Universities. Oh, my sort of first like foray into suicide prevention programming was in the universities, and like, wow, there's a lot of like fucked up suicide prevention programming that happens where it's just like very performative and like fear-based and like, look at all these people who die, and really focused on surveillance and like, if you see something, say something. And so I think it's really powerful to have people there who are like not doing that. But I wonder, like, do you have any conflict around that with people who are running those kinds of programs in your schools? Or are you in schools that aren't even doing those programs to begin with?
We have some mental health organization kind of things, like student run. I'm trying to think of the name of it, and I'm blanking.
Active Minds.
Active Minds. Yeah. We have an Active Minds group. But other than that, I don't know of anything. I have walked people to the counseling center. I don't think the counseling center likes me all that much because I just don't think, and you asked about controversial views. Well, I mean, part of this maybe has to do with being a lawyer, but I think it has more to do with being held in isolation, and being tortured in the U.S. mental health system.
Yeah, I can't believe you would ever think that.
Yeah. So I just don't think coercion is the best way to treat people. And for some, and just the level of paternalism in this whole system that assumes so much about people with mental health conditions, and specifically people who experience suicidality. The immediate assumptions are that we can't take care of ourselves, that we're just incapable, or that we're selfish, or that we're like so many things that just don't fly with me in terms of my own experience, in terms of the other people I know who've dealt with this as well. So the whole idea of coercion in treatment is something, like, I'm not a huge fan of the Treatment Advocacy Center, or what they call assisted outpatient treatment. AOT is what they call it, which is a violation of the Constitution as far as I'm concerned. It's forcing medication on people. Outside, I mean, it's criminal to do that to somebody. And it's one thing if like we were actually if it were true that mental illnesses were just like diabetes, I'd be okay with forcing medication. Like if it was just insulin and we knew it worked, like if it was just that easily done, I think I might even consider it. It's not like that. These are medications that in fact talk about psychosis, like they cause the symptoms of things they're supposed to treat. If you're not careful and being monitored. So the fact that we wouldn't get a say in that, and I think that has a lot to do with noncompliance, is that we're over-medicated, we're given the wrong medication, and then they yell at us for being non-compliant. And for me, I've never been non-compliant because I have a ton of privilege. I have access to healthcare. I have a great psychiatrist. Both my parents are doctors. I've never had that problem. But if I didn't have all those privileges, absolutely, I would have gone off my medication. Because they would have put me on the wrong medication, because they wanted to put me on, immediately put me on lithium, which I'm sure is a great medication for a lot of people, but
gold standard.
Yeah, it is the gold standard. And God bless you if it works for you. But when you're putting really young people on that, maybe you should tell them about the potential side effects of it. And right now I treat my bipolar, with my psychiatrist. I meet with a psychiatrist who does therapy, and my treatment plan is largely PRN, as needed medication. So when I feel myself going manic, or if my husband feels myself going manic, then I take an antipsychotic, and I only have to take it, at most a couple times a year on average. Whereas, I know people with bipolar who take antipsychotics every day, because their physicians don't trust them, to take it when they need it. And I'm livid about that. It makes me so angry that we can't be trusted. And I've seen this happen. It happened to me even, that people, one of my psychiatrists, who is no longer my psychiatrist, had told me after I was diagnosed with bipolar, after an acute manic episode, said like, oh, you have a classic case of bipolar. And I'm just like, well, that if it was so fucking classic, why didn't you catch it? Like you were seeing me for 2 years, like how could you not catch this classic case of bipolar? And the response was like, I just didn't want to put that stigma on you. I was like, I would have liked to have known what I had. And I remember the suggestion of Lamictal coming up. And I know now that Lamictal is a drug that you would use as a mood stabilizer for bipolar, but I never heard the word bipolar. I did hear the word Lamictal, which obviously, like, through deduction is what he was thinking, is that I had
classic bipolar.
Yeah, classic bipolar. Yeah.
I've gotten the bipolar label before. I've, done my tour of the DSM. Where I had like
tour.
I had a big tour, like all the.
What are the steps? Where did it start and go?
Well, I'm a white high school student. When I attempted suicide for the first time, a white woman, a high schooler, who was like promiscuous or whatever. So I got my borderline diagnosis first, and then did a tour of like bipolar and depression and PTSD and all of that until I was 18, and they were like, "Oh, you hear voices? Here we go, schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder."
Wow.
And that whole tour. So, I usually end up somewhere in the schizophrenia, schizoaffective area if I get diagnosed, which I choose not to because I don't. Yeah. I also feel tortured by the mental health system, so I don't participate anymore. Except as I work in the mental health system, so that's interesting. But yeah, I think that the idea of like compliance, especially medication compliance, being like the thing that fixes everything. Medication's the worst thing that happened to me. It was horrible. In 5 or 6 years, I was on 27-ish meds. So like,
Do I need to put up a trigger warning for you? I hear you piss people off when you tell the story I think you might tell in a minute.
I didn't tell anything. Well, now I'm going to tell it.
Well, you better hold on. I got to get
your content notification right up.
I see all the comments on the side, but I can't type anything.
They're showing up on actual Facebook. We would have.
Oh, I see. So it's all right. Okay.
Des is going to put up a content notification.
There it is.
Oh, I'm going to talk about my boobs.
Okay.
So I was on an antipsychotic that made me produce breast milk, and it was really horrifying to me. And it's a common side effect of some antipsychotics. And
what antipsychotic was it?
That was Risperidol.
Risperidol. Okay.
Yeah. Which has many other, things going on. I couldn't talk when I was on that either. So that was more scary to other people. Apparently me telling that story is very, very triggering for some people. That's confusing to me because it's just boobs. I mean,
there's the Zyprexa lawsuits. A lot of them were around men developing breasts, like double G breasts in one case. And that's the crazy part of like, so like they're telling you that like we're improving your quality of life, and it's just like how much do you have to say to somebody we're improving your quality of life while causing all these other side effects that we just want you to completely ignore and just go ahead and keep smoking, by the way, like that's fine.
Right. Well, they don't tell you about any of them, so then you're surprised by them too, right? Especially when you're like, there was internet, but it wasn't like internet is now when I was going through all of that. So it wasn't like I could get online and figure out that other people had that experience. So it was like, not only am I like crazy, I also have a body that's wrong and can't handle crazy pills. So like, it's a rough combination. So, but I think non-compliance can be a virtue.
I think, well, let me just say, I mean, I am on medication. I'm grateful for medication, especially antipsychotics. Again, like I'm grateful for the medication to take it twice a year on average. I'm not like, I don't want to take it every damn day. Yeah. And I want to be trusted that I know what works for me and what doesn't. And it's just, to me, whatever works for you, if you can get it to work, like, thank God, and do it. But I think we're limited in the things that we're allowed. And I just see over and over, especially with bipolar, I just see people told for the rest of your life, you're going to have to take medication. And immediately they're like, see ya. And they check out after that. And instead of saying, okay, let's work with you. What would you be willing to do? What other ways would you be willing to treat it? What role could medication have for you? We say, there's no way to treat this except for with mood stabilizers every day and with lithium every day. Like pick one gold standard, and that's the only way to treat it. And that's just not true. I've met too many people who do well on varied medication regimens and personally, I genuinely believe bipolar is a sleep disorder primarily. And that isn't something I was ever, I have a great psychiatrist now, but before that, it wasn't something people really talked to me about. But for me, like, I know I can prevent mania if I sleep, and I know I can cause it if I don't. It's that connected that it's really like, I wish it had been taken more seriously and people had talked to me about it more. But again, like just the pushing of medication seems to be, and not to the exclusion of therapy. Right. Because the idea is if you have bipolar schizoaffective schizophrenia, you're hopeless. So like the idea is you're completely hopeless, and we may as well, and which is, why he didn't want to give me that bipolar label. And it wasn't just him. I had a psychologist who was like on board with this. There was a woman, and there were two people doing this. Like they were tag teaming me. Yeah. And I mean, I can't tell you in the psychiatric setting how many times I see legal, just like torts left and right. Like you could just have follow any psychiatric patient into the hospital and it's a torts exam. Like that's a torts final exam. It would be a great torts final exam of just.
We have an episode coming up about tort law.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited for that because I don't know.
False imprisonment is a big one.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, I learned, I got diagnosed bipolar when I was 21, and I found out when I moved here that none of my clinicians thought that I was bipolar at all. And then I diagnosed myself with ADD when we were trying to diagnose my wife with ADD. And then I took it to the psychiatrist and I was like, hey, what do you think? And she was like, yeah, I don't know. Let's try the meds. What am I paying you people for?
Oh, God.
Why are you fucking here? And then I find out in my DSM class that bipolar and ADD get mixed up.
All the time. I mean, I was misdiagnosed for 10 years with all of my privileges I mentioned. I was misdiagnosed for 10 years with unipolar depression, given medications that actually caused the presentation of bipolar 1. And now for the rest of my life, I have the label of bipolar 1, which means, for those who may not be familiar, like you have had one acute manic episode. And that manic episode, I think, had a lot, it was also related to medication. And there hasn't yet been a separate spot for people like me. And there are a lot of us that are given, who are just given, and in my case, I wasn't given SSRIs, I was given a different, so like, maybe it's more natural to me to be bipolar, but in terms of pushing someone into mania, when you give them an SSRI, that happens a lot. That's how a whole lot of people get diagnosed with bipolar, is they're given an SSRI and then they go manic, and then or steroids or Ritalin, right? Or amphetamines, and they go manic. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you get this diagnosis, but it's like you induced this diagnosis
you
in
did
a way.
This to me.
Right. And then how do you trust that same system that said you have this, and now we're telling you have this and you should trust it? And for me, like, I trust that I fall into that bipolar category pretty well. I'm looking forward to the day that this is all neurological, that we actually understand these conditions in ways that we absolutely don't at this point.
Yeah. We have a question from Kevix. What do you mean by tort law?
Oh, torts are, so there's two kinds of law. You have the criminal system and the civil system. So the criminal system is the state prosecutes people. And then the civil system is if you like medical malpractice or negligence or, and sometimes there's overlap. So you could have murder or manslaughter in a criminal court and then wrongful death. So wrongful death would be the tort. And the thing about torts is why it's so important, and you hear frequently terms like tort reform or phrases like tort reform. The only way that you can kill a corporation is through suing them. Like that's the way that you get rid of bad corporations. And when you get tort reform, and that's why corporations love it, it gets harder to get rid of these corporations, you can't kill them. And a lot of them are, they prepare for lawsuits. And I mean, Big Pharma is a great example of that. So, so I hope that gives you a sense of what torts are.
Yeah. So I want to ask questions about Roomy, but first I think we should do a beef corner, and then let's talk about Roomy when we get back from beefing. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, but I feel like you should separate Roomy from beef.
Yes, yeah, beef first, then Roomy. Yeah.
I think Roomy should happen in beef corner.
Oh my God. What would Roomy say? Right. Okay.
So, Melody, do you want to start with some beefs, or do you want one of us to start with some beefs?
I feel like I've been talking about nothing but beef, so why don't you start and you can.
Oh, Des, you got a beef today?
I do. I should just pull up the email. Jess, you go first. Let's see.
Okay. My beef right now is how like the nonprofit industrial complex and all the nonprofits inside it get very hung up on like depoliticizing deeply political issues.
Yeah.
To the point that like things that happen within those organizations and the work that they're doing can be so distorted from like doing justice. And that's shitty and I hate it. Because I think it's like, we don't have a lot of opportunities for like people to have careers doing like care work and supporting each other and whatever. And we should, that should be something that people can do and survive. And then when we do have those opportunities, they just get fucked up by nonprofits not being able to like talk about power as a central component of why people are suffering. And I don't like it. That's my beef. It's a sad one. It's a sad beef. But yeah, I just see so often people trying to even organizations like we were talking briefly earlier about AFSP. Like AFSP does these walks, and like walks are they have that's an activist tradition that they have like
I have beefs with walks. I have beef with walks.
I do too. Yeah.
So many beefs with walks.
Because it's like they took protests, like going into the streets, and then turned it into bullshit capitalist, feel good, whatever. That makes me so mad. We don't have to do that.
Well, like and the ableist part of it. Last I checked, the MS, like the major MS association in the US has like a bike ride. Is their primary like raising, and I'm like, first of all, I hate moving if I don't have to, and like, I'm sorry, I don't like to do that, and you shouldn't force people, and I'm just lazy, but like separately, there's it's just crazy ableist, and I can't believe that it hasn't just fallen out of favor, because it's on top of being ableist, it's like incredibly not fun. Like they're trying to make it fun, and it's absolutely not.
And everyone who has to show up there and like work at those events, just hate. You can tell they're being like tortured. They hate it. And there's like some people who are really into walking outside who I think enjoy being there. But like, what are we doing? And like, what are you? And they're always about raising awareness, but it's actually about raising money. But like, awareness about what? Like, like that there is suicide. Like we all know.
Yeah,
we all know.
Are aware. What now?
Des, you ready?
Okay, so the context is that the American Association of Suicidology, which is an organization which does lots of things, talks about doing a lot of things about suicide, has lots of people involved from different parts of the suicide field. They're closing down their listserv, which had like 1,200 people on it for fuckery reasons. And the listserv has been pretty racist in the past couple of years, pretty problematic. And it's interesting because when you call people out on the shitty things that they say, then everything goes silent. And so obviously you stop feeling safe. When they made the announcement that they were shutting down a listserv, I was like, oh shit, I'm going to start a new listserv. with no bullshit, or I mean, different bullshit probably. I'm gonna try to have different bullshit. So whatever, things got weird. Had to send a statement about the difference between the listservs today. And I have in my listserv, the owner and moderators of this listserv practice anti-racism and believe white supremacy should be dismantled. We believe that those who are not committed to these values are not committed to truly addressing the issue of suicide. I get a response from a white man, obviously. And he says that he thinks the conversations around suicide must be canceled or negated if they do not accord to a specific worldview about race and society, per what he read that I wrote. And that one of the assumptions in this is that the lay and professional study of suicide can only be valid if it is centrally focused on racial issues, and that people who don't believe that should like be silenced. And I'm like, dude, you've been doing this for fucking years. For years. And the suicide rate continues to go up.
Yeah.
Let's try a different thing. Maybe let someone else fucking talk for once. Shut the fuck up. Shut up. Shut up. So that's some of my beef.
That's a good beef.
Shut up.
2 good beefs. Melody, what you got for beef?
Beef. I love this. And I feel like I'm gonna take it wherever I want to take it. Voter suppression is sort of something I'm beefing on. Yeah. I got my and I'm not putting myself out there as the giant victim of voter suppression, but I will say
today, it looks like.
I did vote today. Allegedly, inshallah, I don't know if it's going to count. I genuinely don't trust anything about the American government anymore. And the reason I took my absentee ballot that I was supposed to mail into the actual Board of Elections office and drove it there with my mask and glasses was so that I could drop it off, ask 3 separate people, are you sure this is going to count? Because what happened to me is that the absentee ballot I got, the envelope was sealed shut. So I had to open it with steam, and it was MacGyver. It was straight out of MacGyver trying to open it, and I'm not fucking MacGyver, so it didn't work. And there were some rips in it. So when I called them, they were like, oh, as long as it doesn't look torn. This happened to a bunch of people. We think it's because of humidity. And I'm like, fuck this. If I'm going to be disenfranchised by humidity in North Carolina, where maybe if you're going to send out absentee ballots and that's an issue, and they're like, we fixed it now. They said they fixed it now. Yeah. So, and I asked them, how many people? Oh, I don't know, but we keep getting people who come in and ask about this. And I'm like, how many people don't ask about it and try and fill it out and just give up?
Yeah.
Welcome to North Carolina.
There are wild things that happen in Colorado where they
oh my God.
Each different district has different rules and stuff, and the way that things get counted and done are different. And so in different places there's a lot more suppression happening, and it's ugly and unfortunate and untrustworthy.
What's that face, Des?
Yeah, what? What?
We've been blocked by Facebook again. I don't understand.
They've blocked us?
Oh, you're kidding.
What? We're still on Twitter.
Are we still on Twitter?
Yeah, it's still blasting on Twitter. I just don't understand.
I don't understand.
Is it because I do. Angel? Did you play too much Angel?
Oh my God.
Maybe, but it's
or is it because of my boobs?
It might be your boobs.
It's not because of suicide. They don't just freak out if you mention suicide at all.
No, we've been doing this for a year.
Yeah.
They don't usually do that.
Yeah, no, they don't care. It's Warner Music Group. Which record company? God.
It is music?
Yeah. Is Stan McLaughlin on Warner? No, Stan McLaughlin's on Arista. That makes no sense. Arista, excuse me.
So what?
I don't understand what's happening. I guess I'll figure that out. We're still live on Twitter.
Okay.
We're still live on Twitter, so we'll just tell people on Facebook, go to Twitter.
I thought it was telling me that we were in trouble because of the other stuff again. So I was like, oh, now it decided it's mad at me again about WAP. No. No. It's mad about Mitch playing Sarah McLachlan somehow. I'm so confused.
We're still on Twitter. I guess I'm fine with that.
I mean, it's available. It's going to be available for a while. So.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, how stupid. And annoying.
Super annoying.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know.
Good time to talk about Roomy?
Yes, I feel like Rumi would be very anti-Facebook. So yeah.
Yes. So I was really excited about your book because I have had moments in my life where I was very loosely tethered with reality and read tons and tons of Rumi actually during those times.
Oh, wow.
So I was excited to hear about that. I'm interested in hearing about your relationship with Rumi a little bit and why that's important to you also.
Oh, yeah. So my latest book, for those of you who aren't aware, shameless plug, is called The Roomy Prescription, How an Ancient Mystic Poet Changed My Modern Manic Life. So that book is about learning Rumi's poetry in Persian from my father. The book is in English, but I did these translations of Rumi's poetry throughout, and each chapter is separated into a different diagnosis and a different prescription because I thought it was cute. And the diagnoses are they're not clinical. I mean, some overlap with clinical diagnoses, but they go through anxiety, depression, anger, fear, ego, one of the worst. But yeah, and Rumi's response to how you deal with all those emotions. So it was it was definitely a spiritual pilgrimage for me to learn this poetry that I spent my entire life taking for granted because my dad has recited it to me since I was a kid. And like a bratty kid, like I was always rolling my eyes and being like, whatever. And so I wasn't paying attention. But now it's been really great because for me, my progression as an activist is that I started off angry and I'm still fucking pissed, right? Yeah. I wake up every morning angry. Mm-hmm. That is what I am best at. Like nobody ever looked at me and was like, Melody has a hard time standing up for herself. Like that was never on my report card going home. I was always okay with that. And I just, that anger can only carry you so far until it burns you up from the inside. And I have some strong suspicions around my mental health diagnosis and that anger. And I think they're connected. And I'm not a super woo-woo person. Like I really think those things are connected. And I wish I'd learned earlier that the most powerful weapon against injustice is not anger, that it's love. That instead of focusing all of my attention on my anger for the oppressor, if I had focused my attention on my love for the oppressed, including myself, right? Nothing would have changed. I would have still written the same books. I still would have gone to the same protests. I still would have gotten the same bumper stickers. Like all of it would have been the same, except for just everything would have been different. Like everything inside my head would have been different because my perspective would have been focused on love instead of focused on anger. And I believe anger is incredibly powerful. It has driven my entire career that I'm grateful for. But it was also driving me crazy. So that's what this book came out of, was realizing that I couldn't do this to myself anymore. And I just see so many activists burn out so quickly. And I worry, I'm so proud, grateful, in awe of like Gen Z, millennial, right under me, like that generation of my students. Like I'm so crazy proud of them for what they're doing, but I'm so crazy worried for them too. Because I know that you can do that for a decade, maybe even two, but it will take its toll if you let the anger be your driving force instead of the love, because the love is where you get the community, and that's how you organize, and that's actually more effective than just spitting anger all the time.
And you don't have the anger unless you have the love first either, right?
Well, that's true.
You wouldn't feel it if you didn't have that love first. So it's always under there, right? Anger is always secondary to something else, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So
Agree.
and I also like that talking about those two things doesn't rely on being hopeful either, because I think being hopeful in activism is like that will kill you.
Yeah.
To be hopeful in activism, because you lose a lot. We lose all the time. At least in the when we have big demands and things like that. So being able to focus on like community and connection and stuff, is critical, or else we'll kill ourselves in all kinds of different ways.
Don't kill yourself now.
I have a lot of hate for how people talk about hope.
I love this Chiron.
Yeah. Just how it's sort of proposed as this like,
oh wait, we're not in beef corner anymore.
Just be hopeful. Or what?
We're not in beef corner anymore.
Oh yeah, we're not in beef corner.
We exited beef corner. Yeah. We've gone on.
We've left. We've moved on.
No, you exited the background. I see. I
now.
see the fun. Yeah.
Oh,
okay. So do you have favorite Rumi poems?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My favorite one in terms of like my mantra, the one that whenever I feel like I'm going into a room and I feel like I'm not good enough to be there for or that I don't belong there, that poem for me, it's a couplet of his where I'll tell you the Persian first and then the English just so you can hear the musicality of it. It's Zar talab gashti khod awwal zar budi, which means you went out in search of gold far and wide, but all along you were gold on the inside. Which was the ultimate like discovery of this entire pilgrimage. And so it doesn't work well with capitalism to be like, you don't need this book. Actually, you don't need anything but you don't like that's Rumi's message is the problem with human beings is we're so forgetful. And it's so easy to forget how sacred and holy, like we have that holiness, that sacred part of ourselves that's inside of us and it connects all of us, but it's so easy to forget it. And unfortunately, like the only way, especially in, there's some people for whom like the only way to connect with that is through substances. And that could be great for some people for some time. But I also think this is where those of us with mental health conditions have a leg up because some of us are spiritually gifted. And this book was my journey from just like misfit to mystic, going from this like feeling out of place to actually embracing that feeling out of place. Because for Rumi, like the way that you create community is not through imitation, which is how a lot of people try to create community, is to copy. His community is through innovation. The way that you create community and fight isolation for him is to actually invent something new, which connected with me so much because every time I write something new, I feel like it connects me with the rest of the world, even before it's published. Like it's not even contingent on the publication of it. It's just a way of connecting by creating something new that ideally is being routed through me instead of, coming just from me, because anything that just comes straight from me and nothing else is not going to be so great. So if I can be open to that, and that journey is like absolutely ongoing, and I don't claim to have learned all those lessons. So please stop. Please stop telling me every time I do something wrong, you're like, well, would Rumi do that? Like, this is the problem with writing a book like this, is people are like, oh, you're supposed to have figured it out by now. So every time you fuck up, somebody's like, well, would Rumi really do that? And I'm like, please.
This isn't like a what would Jesus do? Like,
yes, I know. This is like my crescent to bear, I guess.
Oh man.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I think there's it's nice to have something to aspire to.
Yeah, exactly. And part of why it was so important for me to write this book is because of how much Westerners have fallen in love with Rumi without really knowing where that's coming from and what culture that comes from. And as an Iranian, like that's my culture. That's where I come from. And I genuinely believe that there's a special type of healing that comes from going back to your own roots, whatever those roots may be. Not just the healing of whatever traumas you've had, but the intergenerational traumas. I think there's a way of getting at that through the literature, the music, the art, the food that is your origin story. Like whatever you come from, go back to it. And as an Iranian American, that's not an easy thing for me to do. I can't go back to Iran safely. And right now, like my family can't visit me in the United States because of Trump. So that whole situation makes it like talk about, you know, intergenerational trauma, and like my parents came here for a better life. And the irony of like so many of us, so many of these immigrants that everyone loves blaming for everything. My parents came here because in 1953, the United States staged a coup with Great Britain in Iran, overthrew a democratically elected leader because he wanted to nationalize oil so that, God forbid, Iranians could benefit from their own natural resources. And God forbid, and then installed their puppet. And of course, like you can only be ruled by an imperialist puppet regime for so long. And during that time, like, you know, the British put up country clubs where they said no dogs or Iranians allowed. Like this is inside of Iran. They did this. And then, like, of course, we're going to fight back from that. And one of the easiest things to unite the people in Iran, because the majority were not only Muslim, but Shia Muslim, and a weird version of Shia Muslim is what we are. Sorry, I've gone on like such a big tangent. I'm just annoyed. I'm so annoyed by the fact, I'm still in beef corner. I'm so annoyed by the fact that we get so mad about these immigrants coming, but you think about the fact that the U.S. is the reason. Had the U.S. never staged that coup, I would be fine in Iran. I would never have learned English, and you would have been free of me. You know, like I would have never made it to America if America didn't make it to Iran. If America didn't support Iraq during the Iran-Iraq war, and also covertly support Iran so that we would kill each other, so they could steal the oil out from under us, and then support the Sandinistas while they were at it. Like this country is so fucked up and what it's done historically, and we are facing that. Like that has come to life right now in the form of Trump. And I rarely agree with the supreme leader of Iran, but what he said when Trump was elected was, we're now seeing the real face of America. And I think one of the most, hopefully, inshallah, the most beautiful things about Trump's presidency is people were forced to look at what America is, as opposed to Obama is what America aspires to be. And we thought we were that for a hot second, you know? And everyone said racism is over, whatever. Oh no, like it's so not. And this is, you know, there's a difference between what you aspire to be and what you actually are. And we are now seeing that split, that giant chasm between what we're aspiring to be and what we are. And this is so relevant to how, Jess, you introduced yourself as being on stolen land. Like it's all relevant. And it comes back to you. Yeah, I know.
I keep forgetting because I hate introducing myself. Sorry.
I know I have to write mine down, or I can't remember to say the right things. I think that all of these things are extremely relevant to suicide prevention, though.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
we act as if like culture and history and intergenerational trauma and all these things are somehow like not like somehow separate from suicide, but like we have created suicide.
Well, that's such a good point. Like it is, and I'll never forget. I don't know if I have time. I could talk to y'all forever, but I'll never forget. I was doing a mental health workshop at this Masjid conference. Masjid is the MASGD, the Muslim Alliance for Sexual and Gender Diversity. And I remember some trans and non-binary Muslims. In the end of that conversation, suicide came up. And I was trying to be as responsible as I could be. And at the end, I remember one of them saying to me, you can't just tell us, take suicide away from us and then say what you need to actually do instead of telling us don't kill yourself is give us a world worth living in. And that just blew me away. Because I had been sort of indoctrinated into this world of just, this is the way you look at it. Just take the guns away from people, force them in hospitals. Like, this is the way you fix it, is through, I'm all for taking guns away from everyone, ideally. But not just those of us with mental health conditions.
Yeah, just with the police, right?
I'm all for that, but the idea of treating people differently because of it is just gets under my skin. We need to make a world that is worth living in for some people who.
Oh, you're gonna get us in more trouble. No one is singing. No one's asleep. Okay.
Sorry. See, that's my bedtime. I told you I was staying out after my bedtime. That's my alarm to go to sleep. Oh. Speaking of, I know. See, but Morrissey, I was such a huge Morrissey fan growing up, and I know he's such a racist prick. But it's so sad because it's not just me. He's like, a lot of immigrants are a big fan of Morrissey. It's a weird. You can just look up like Mexicans and Morrissey. There's a whole world of like specifically Mexicans and Morrissey.
What?
I'm going to be spending time on that at some point.
Right?
I think that's actually a great wrapping up point, is just thinking about like the world's building a world worth living in is sort of something we talk about all the time on this show. And then just Des and I in general, is that like asking people to live in conditions that are not livable, that they're telling you are not livable, instead of changing the world around them is a huge problem. And suicide prevention as a sort of, big monolith ignores that. Even when they say things like, we're going to create a world worth living in, it's like, okay, so how? Because your walk isn't doing it. I don't even want to walk.
Go outside.
But yeah, I think that's like the big challenge to us, is like, how do we do that? And there's a million different strategies for that, but that's an easy way for all of us to be involved in preventing suicide, is to try and make a world that we want to live in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's fucked up because I started including that in my talks, this year specifically. And people are like, whoa. And I'm like, I don't know. Just don't be a dick. Like, what?
This is nothing revolutionary. I mean, go be revolutionary about it, but like, it's not a revolutionary concept. Well,
yay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. Thank you. I seriously could talk to y'all forever.
We're going to have to just bring you back then.
Yeah.
Please. Yeah, we'll do it
anytime. I'd love it.
We love bringing people back, because then it's like we can expand on any of the little threads that
I mean, if you bring me back, it has to all be beef. I feel like.
Yeah. We'll just do beef. We'll put beef in the background the whole time. That's great. That's generally kind of what we do
for one whole hour.
Yeah.
We'll call it a beef hour.
Yeah. Okay, so I did confirm, by the way, Warner Music Group does not own that album or the licensing to that song.
But they reported us?
Yeah, somehow. I think we're just now going to be on their list of people to be mad at, and they're going to fuck with us every episode now, I guess.
Only when we play music, because remember last time the music didn't work and they didn't fuck with us?
You can find music that has with a Creative Commons license. I did this with so like David Byrne has a lot of great music, I think, that is open source. So go to David Byrne.
Mitch's beautiful song.
Right.
What the fuck? I gotta figure this out.
We'd have made a man cover a song for us.
We made a man cover the Angel song.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
Oh.
What did I ever do to them? Quit with a week and a half notice? What?
Oh, you did do that to them, didn't you?
You did.
Oh, shit.
You couldn't do 2 weeks. You were just like, no, that's where I draw the line. Is
10 days.
10 days, yeah.
Yeah. My boss yelled at me for coming in late after I got married, the weekend after, not to fell to that other asshole that I got married to that one time. And I was like half an hour late, and she just like ripped me a new asshole, and I hated her anyway. And I was like, fuck this, I'm quitting. I'm gonna get a job serving somewhere. And the moment I had one, I was like, leaving. Bye. So I went and served burgers and made a lot less money.
But we're happier, I bet.
Yeah.
Yes, in fact. We did the thing. It was amazing. Burgers did help me feel like I had a better life. So a life worth living.
Did it? Because didn't you try and kill yourself after that?
No, it was before that.
Oh, it was before that. Okay.
Yeah. It's fine. Everyone's fine. It got me more time to work on Live Through This.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we have officially hit 1 hour. We did great.
Awesome.
Say goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
It was great being with both of you. Bye, y'all.
Thank you so much.
Take care.